smart you are, but you try to apply the principles. And then what happens is that you do techniques based on the problems that you try to solve. I think we have until 5:30, 5:30, somewhere around there. And before that, the last 2 hours or so, I'll fight with anybody who wants to fight. I have my shoulder is a bit bad, but I'll stick to it as long as I can. Because I hate it when people say that they know things and they teach things, but they can't stand for them. So I would appreciate if you beat me up and tell me what I need to help improve on, and I'll fight with you, and maybe I can help you with what you need to improve on. But I always want to teach only the things that I can do myself, which might be difficult in historical fencing, but I try as hard as I can. Tomorrow we'll do more sparring, and we'll do coached sparring, which means that we will learn how to use sparring as a training tool to get better, and not just the little fun thing we do at the end of the class. We'll see with different exercises how to be a good student and a good instructor or coach, and use sparring specifically as a drill to become better quickly. Okay, but first, because it's pretty cold, we'll warm up, and after that we'll do some solo exercises, cutting in the air, to learn good motor skills, and it also gives me the opportunity to see how good you are. And then we'll work with defensive skills, using the 4 hanging guards first, and then we'll move on to some offensive and more technical exercise. The reason why I have okay. The reason why I do put emphasis on defensive skills is that even though in the manuscripts they talk a lot about taking initiative, taking the forward, and being and taking the fight to the opponent, people are confusing that with always being aggressive. But I think it's different between being aggressive and being assertive. And being assertive means that you dominate the fight, and you can do that even when you're on the defense. If you have good defense, you can decide when to fight. If you have no good defense, then all you can do is offense, and then the opponent always knows that you will attack, and that means that you do not have the initiative, even though you're striking, because he knows exactly what you will do. So it's better that you have the opportunity to choose when and how to fight, and that means that you need to be able to be safe and just parry and move away and then strike when you want to strike. That's why I encourage defensive skills as the foundation. Okay, we can put the swords away, and you just follow me. When I clap once, it's 3 push-ups. When I clap twice, it's 5 sit-ups. So you don't lean too far forward, because then it's hard to recover, and the opponent will hit you in the head. Try to keep the upper body straight, tense your gut, push your shoulders back, up, and then back to recovery position again. So we'll try it. Over to that side, like this. Forward, backward, extend, back. Forward, backward, extend, back. Over to this side, and then we'll walk back. The reason why we do the long lunge, the extension all over, is not because we look like this a lot in historical fencing. You don't see a lot of longsword manuals when they are this far extended. Usually it's up here. But if you do an exaggerated motion, it gives you better muscle training, so that the body is prepared for it. So it can be good to make the big motions when you train, to help you with the small motions when you actually fight. Okay, so this exercise is the simple one that we took from Olympic fencing, but then we also try to add different things, because this is not how footwork looks in historical fencing. You know, footwork looks, change to different sides and passing steps, left foot, right foot. So we're going to try that instead. We're not in this position now, we're standing a little bit more upright. Step, 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 2 steps, pass and lunge, and back to the other side. And then up here again. Step, step, pass, back. Okay? Step, step, pass, back. Over to that side, and then we'll slowly walk back to catch our breath. 2 simple steps. 1, 2, pass, and back. 2 simple steps instead of passing step. It doesn't sound so difficult. But it is difficult when you want to do it with some intensity. And then if you have a sword, and then you have an opponent who wants to hit you in the head, it becomes even more difficult. So coordination and strength and speed exercises, we don't have them yet, so we need to train this a lot, so that we can then perform with high intensity, weapon in hand against our opponent. Okay, so that was adding a passing step. You can of course also add a step, step, triangle, extension if you wish, like in regular. One other thing that we have in historical fencing that the Olympic fencing does not have is wrestling. So even when we fence with the sword, it's still okay to go in for grappling, to disarms and locks. And one important key factor in wrestling is change of elevation. Because you can be up to try to wrestle someone and then you quickly change down to go low for the takedown. And it works more as I say when you grab with the sword. So we try to add that into the exercise now. Now we stand quickly, step in, touch the floor, jump up, step, step, up, and back. Okay? This is the wrestling we do. Slowly, touch, up, step, step, pass, recover. And over. It's very simple. It's important to think about body posture when we do these exercises because now we're only thinking about the legs because that's all we use. And our upper bodies, they just tend to follow wherever our legs go, so it's easy to lose balance. And when we fight with weapons, it usually happens the opposite, that we only think with the arms and we don't use the legs. So you want to coordinate these two parts. So it's important when we train like this, not to forget about the upper body, because now when I see some of you, when you feel that you lose balance, it is usually because you're only thinking about the legs and not about the torso and the arms. Because you let the arms hang and the back has clenched your gut, muscles here, so the back just hangs. And now all the weight of your upper body is leaning to the side. So it's hard for your legs to carry that. You want to tense up, shoulders back a little bit so you have fixed body posture. And it will be much easier for your legs to move your body without you losing balance. Because you want to be able to do this while you're fighting still. And then you can't stand like this. Okay, last exercise then. Fencing is eye, hand, and foot coordination. And some of my best students are the video game players, because they can see and then immediately react with their hands. But they can't react with their feet, thanks to video games, so we have to teach them that. So this exercise we call the Bavarian exercise, because you know the Southern German fencing or the dancing, like that, we do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step, step, extend, and back. And up. Okay? Hand through. 1, 2 in front, behind. Step, step, pass, and back. Okay? These next exercises will be solo exercises when we cut with the sword, different combinations. And we just saw that we need control over our bodies, but we also need control over the sword to make it go exactly where we want to. It's very difficult to perform an advanced technique if we do not know how to place the weapon in exactly where we want it with exactly as much speed and power as we want. So doing these solo exercises, in my opinion, is very important. It's also a lot of fun. And every time you do them, you shave off a little bit of superfluous movement. You become a little bit more tight in your movement. You can generate more power, more speed, exactly where you want the sword to be. Test cutting with sharp weapons is excellent for this because that really teaches you when you cut properly. And that translates immediately into skill when we spar with blunt weapons. Because when you cut a sharp weapon, even if you miss with the angle just a little bit, or if you don't put the body behind it, you will make a flawed cut. And it's the same when you spar with blunt weapons. If you can cut with the blunt weapon like you cut with the sharp, you can place your body behind the sword perfectly, and you can generate power with small motions, and you will become a much better fencer because you won't be wobbling around, and the edge, if you place the edge properly, that also generates power. That means you can take a strong bind, you hit your opponent with force. If you saw the final at Swordfish with the long sword, the Swedish fencer who won, his name is Hans Jörnlind. He's my first instructor actually. He's an old man, but he's very, very good. And he doesn't like tournaments, but he does well in them. And the reason why he performs so well is partly, of course, because he trains a lot of techniques from the manuals, but he's the official test cutter for Alvin Sword. So he does a lot of test cutting for them. He tries all of the weapons, and that means that he's very good at generating power just with small motions of the body. And you saw how he can perform very well, and with small motions he can hit hard and go through the opponent's pattern. So test cutting is very good, even if you never fight with sharps and only with guns. So we'll spread out, make sure you have space, and just make sure you can see me. And we'll do a few of these exercises. So you can spread out all across the hole, and just not hit each other.
Spread out. Non, mais je le filme, et après je la pose derrière.
La caméra peut t'embêter.
So, sword either above your head and go back to the side, left foot forward, and then we'll strike from right to left, and we'll add footwork to it immediately. So when you strike from the right, you step back, or you step forward with the right foot, or you step back with the left foot, and then we do the same from the left. So we try to cut in an X cross pattern, like this, with long edge, just like that, and then we add footwork to it, so you step with the cut, like so. You just try to go and get some flow into it. Important again, tense your stomach muscles to get stability, sink down a little bit, don't cheat, try to make the proper cuts at all times. Try to generate force not only from your arms, but from your legs. So when you step, it's not the arms that push your body, it's the foot that generates the power when you move. Okay? Long edge and from above, left and right. Out work with your body. If you're stepping with the cut and your knee goes inwards, this is injury risk, and you don't generate so much power as you would be able to. So try to keep the knee in front of your foot, try to keep the shoulders back a little bit, and tense your muscles. So you always have focus. When you're doing these cuts, always be conscious about what you're doing. Change small things when you do it. Maybe I should sit down a little bit, maybe I should rise up. See what happens if I change the position of my feet with my hands and try to find the sweet spot. So we do it a little bit more, and now try to correct these tricks. And also when you make the strike, aim at something, because if you're not aiming at something, you will start being sloppy and your cut will fall down to the side and you will not be able to hit anything. Either look at me and try to cut through my throat, or someone who's standing in front of you, find something on the wall that you can aim through, so that you always have focus when you strike. So just a little bit more, and then think about the knees, think about the shoulders, and the stomach and the back, and your legs. Try to find good posture. Okay, looking backwards and forwards and to the sides. As you strike, always long edge. Okay, short edge into it. So we'll start from above again, but first we'll strike with the short edge from the right, and then immediately we'll strike with the long edge also from the right. So it's from the same direction, but first with short and then with long edge. First it will be almost like a shinhau or a krumpau, and then like a sauna, like this. 1, 2. And it doesn't matter which side of the head you strike. Usually when I do this, it's 1 step and 2 strikes. 1, 2, like that. And then of course we try it on the other side. So it's a double cross now. Short edge, long edge, short edge, long edge, short edge, long edge, short edge, long edge. Short edge, long edge. Starting from below, short edge, long edge, short edge, long edge. Let the sword flow with you. You do it nice, short edge first. 1, and then back to the same side, and then long edge. So both times you strike from the right up to the left. And then you strike from the left up to the right. Short edge, long edge. 1, 2, all the way back. 1, 2, all the way back. 1, 2, 1. So we do from above from the right, 2 cuts, short edge, long edge, above from the left, short edge, long edge, and below from both sides. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and up. So you go through all the 4 angles towards the 4 openings with both the long edge and the short edge. Starting from the right, above, left, above. Right, low, left, better, and back. skills now, and we will use the 4 hanging guards, which is basically an ox extended to the right and left side, and the same with flute on the right and left side. And the Döbringen manuscript, the earliest German language manuscripts that we know about, talks about how all the guards originate from these 4. And in one way it's true, because no matter how you move the body, you will end up in one of these 4 guards. If you stand in a low guard and extend it, you're coming into a hanger, and if you go up, you fall tie, all the way down again, and up you get into a hanger. If you stand in Alba, you try to extend, you get into a hanger. So and usually also when you fence, you end up in one of these guards, either as a strike or as a parry. You come here. And these guards are excellent for defending. Lichtenauer talks about 2 ways of warding an attack. Either with absetzen, which is where you catch an opponent's blade in a hanging parry, and also hopefully thrust him at the same time, or the versetzen, when you strike away an opponent's attack, using the master strikes. And now first, we will focus on parrying with the hanging guards. And this is, for some reason, a skill that's been missing for a lot of us for many years, the simple skill of parry. And I think that's because we misunderstand some of the manuscripts. We see them as teaching books, but they're not. They're not an instruction manual. They're instructions for people who can already fence. They're not for us beginners with no knowledge about fencing, really. So we only look at about what the manuscript writes about a lot. For example, in Ringeck spends a lot of time talking about the Zwerhau and all the master strikes, and then we train them a lot because we think that if he writes a lot about them, that means that's the most important thing. And sometimes he just say, and then when he parries, you do this. And he doesn't say how you parry. So we have to look for this information in the manuscripts and also work with the things that the masters just talk about briefly. Because obviously they want you to have the foundational skills as well before you can start working on the advanced. And this is, we need to find not only what they describe in detail, but also what they briefly say that you should know this, and then try to come up with ways of knowing this and having these skills. And parrying, of course, is one of them. So, one thing that I often see when I observe people fight is that they are very eager to counterattack and move out of the guard. If Gaetan attacks me with an attack, it's simple. As most people can parry, but then when he strikes again to another opening, they also want to do a big motion, either to parry again or to counter-strike. And that gives opportunity for Gaetan to attack me because I'm moving out of my guard from the first strike, and somewhere around here he can see all these different openings I have. But instead, maybe it's better for me to just rest in the same guard and let him attack until I can find an opening to counter with, or either withdraw out of distance and reset the fight. So a valuable skill is to be able to, from the same guard, parry all the 4 openings of the body. And I'm sure if you know Lichtenauer, you know about the 4 openings of the body. You divide the body with a cross like this, and you have the upper left, upper right, and lower left opening that you try to attack it. So now we will go through all of the 4 hanging guards, but we'll cover all the 4 openings here. So the exercise looks like this. Gaetan will strike to the 4 openings, just with the long edge, pam, 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 in whichever order he wants. And I will use the same guard to defend all these different openings. So just with small adjustments, I will use the high hanger, for example, to parry left and right, but also low left and right, dipping into Schrankut or something like that. This gives a very powerful and tight defense, and the less I have to move to parry Gaetan's attack, the more time I have to prepare my own counter. So when Gaetan attacks, if I want, that's extra with the same guard to all different openings. And we'll try that. So instead of trying to move out of the guard immediately and do something else, just stay with the same one, and regardless of where he attacks from, you will be able to parry with just that same guard. So we'll divide up in pairs, we stand in a line like this, then one of you will attack constantly over to this side, bam, 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 bam. To the 4 openings, high, left and right, high and low, and your partner will just, starting with the left high hanging guard, like this, we'll just move back and parry over to the other side, and then we'll switch and move back, okay? So impact. Okay, listen please. We will use the right side now instead, right up your hanger. And just a few pointers. The first one, this is pretty simple, so I would like to see you do it a little bit more with more intensity. Okay, you can add a little bit more to it, it's fine. If you get hit, don't stop, just keep parrying anyway. The second thing is that you want to apply also footwork, not only the guard, but you want to make it as difficult as possible for the opponent. And if you're always moving backwards, straight backwards, with the same foot, always leading, that's a pattern for your opponent. She will see that, okay, he only does this, he never moves to the side. You don't give any new information that she has to deal with. So to make it more difficult and to help you set up a counter, when you are being pushed back, also use different steps, move to the side when you parry, and make it more difficult for opponents. Don't just step straight back, step to the side a little bit, use different footwork, so it will be more and more difficult for him to continue with the attack. This gives you more and more space for eventually doing the counter. Okay, so now we try with the right side, more intensity and more variety with the feet and your body movement when you defend. Let's do the last one with a low hanging guard instead. And it's okay to use both left and right this time just to save us some time. Again, you can adapt the guard. Depending if your opponent strikes low, you can parry low. If your opponent strikes high, you can lift the guard up almost into a crow-like position. The Glasgow manuscript talks about this position a lot, which is some sort of mix between flug and crow, but it's the most common used parry, I think, in that manuscript. So, depending on where the attacks come, you lift it up or you lower it. You can, of course, you also add to this with your body. You don't have to be in the same height at all times. You want to parry low, you can go low to prepare for a counter. I have started to try to use the cross guard horizontally like this, regardless of where I parry. I know in different manuscripts it says different things. For me, this has become pretty comfortable because if you hold the sword like this, your hands are always covered. You stand like that with the cross guard diagonally. When you move to the other side, there's a moment here where your hands are unprotected for strikes until you move over. But if you stand with the cross guard horizontally like that, your hands are always covered regardless of which parry you go. So it might be something for you to try out. But we do it the last time now, and you use the low parry as you move back to take the front of the building. Okay? Do it twice each. This is, in my opinion, a very important skill. To always feel comfortable in defense, so you're not stressed. Maybe that's the most. This is what I'm trying to get to. You should only fight, as I said, when you want to. If you don't want to fight, you should just parry and move off, and then until you have a plan to come in with. But if you feel stressed and don't know what to do, as soon as the opponent attacks you, you have already lost the initiative, and you won't be able to defend properly. If it was life or death, that would be death. And even now, when it's not life or death, it means that you can't develop your fencing because as soon as the opponent attacks, you freak out. So just being able to stay comfortable in this little box and know that whatever the opponent does, at least I have some sort of close parry that I can fall back to defend myself, even if I don't have a plan. It's the foundation, I would say, together with the footwork. Because this gives you time to come up with good ideas for a nice offense. And there's nothing as frustrating for a fencer than when he throws all his attacks, all his cool moves, and another person just goes pop, 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 and moves off, and you can't do anything. So the last time now we will add even more intensity to it. You can parry with any guard you want to. Just try to stay safe. The person who's attacking, try to really push and try to hit your friend towards the four openings. Put some real pressure on. And you who are defending, when you parry, always look for, even if you don't have to take the opportunity, look for opportunities for counter-attacks. One of the best ways of doing this is to do what Gaetan does, because when he parries, he doesn't just lift his sword up to a static parry, he strikes with the parry, he strikes the sword quite high. And Joachim Meyer calls this Abschneiden, but you can also call it a defensive sword now, or whatever. But this, when you strike away the opponent's blade, without you losing your cover, this stifles the energy of the opponent, and this gives you more time eventually for a counter-attack. So it's a very good idea. Okay, so last time, do it twice each, more intensity, really strike, you try to hit your opponent, and when you're defending, try to use 4 different guards, and see if you can find openings for attack. If you see the opening, try to take it from here. Okay? So almost like Spartan. Okay, we will start with the master strike now, and we will start with the sword now. I think this is the cut that most people are most familiar with. The cut that comes from natural defense. But we will try to see if we can use it in at least 2 different ways, offense and defense, and also see if we can try to work with the principles of wall and mark, just using the sword. So, for me, the idea of a master strike is usually talked about as a way to defend yourself and hit the opponent at the same time. I think that's only true to a certain extent. You should be able to close the attacking line of the opponent, but then the most important thing is not to hit him really, but to make sure that you take initiative, that you take the forward. What this means is that a lot of times the opponent is also a skilled defender. You won't be able to hit him in the first strike, but you need to make sure that your attack is so convincing that he goes to parry before he can strike you. And when he does that, when he dedicates himself to defending, that gives you the opportunity for the follow-up strike. And that's the most important thing, I believe, with the master strike. And a lot of us will do this wrong, because we make one attack, but then we immediately withdraw. I see this all the time. I make an attack at someone, and then I go to parry, and then I have just given him the initiative back. Instead, I want to make the attack in such a way that Gaetan has to parry, and that I can continue to attack him. So I make a proper head so that I can continue. And this is what I think Lichtenauer talks about, this continuous attacking. And many of the manuscripts, they say, don't make the first strike unless you have a plan. Always follow up the first strike with the Vorschlag, with the Nachschlags, the follow-up strikes. And don't just attack and then go back to parry, like you see in, for example, military saving later on. So it's important to be able to make the attack in a convincing way, to really try to strike towards the head. So we will try to work with that now. And this is when you use the sword now offensively. And when I do it, and when we do it in Gothenburg, we try to shoot the point in towards the opponent. So it's not a big cleaving cut like that. It's more about throwing the point into the face of the opponent and also dominating the center line between us. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the center line, but the center line means that there's an invisible thread between the chest of Gaetan and me, and whoever is dominating that center line is the one who has the initiative, because I'm now in a better position. Gaetan tries to take it back using binding and winding. Now he has it. So I also try to take it back like this. And this sets me up for a more powerful, for a stronger position, and I can put my point in the face of my opponent. So I now have initiative. So when I make the strike, I want to threaten him, I want to close his line of attack, and I want to take the center line. What I mean by closing his line of attack is that I want to be covered behind the sword. I don't have a shield, so I have to defend myself with the sword. If I strike, but I don't put the sword in the way of his potential counterattack, I strike like this, and he could just counter-strike and we'll both be dead. Instead, I want to place myself behind the weapon so that I am also covered, and I'm threatening him. So when we do the sword now as an initiating attack, we try to throw the point to the face of the opponent and also cover ourselves behind it. And more I'm leaning towards the interpretation of shooting the hip forward as well. You see this in the Goliath manuscript. I haven't really figured out exactly how to do it, but you can see people like Dustin Reagan and Anton Kovatovich doing this really well. This sets the body up just like when we did the leg exercises earlier. It sets your body up good for continuous motion. So shoot the point in, and stay covered, and really make the attack in such a way that he has to parry. Like that. And now, of course, we shouldn't stop, we should just continue on. But we'll start with this simple exercise first. Where one of you tries to shoot the point, and another one just tries to defend and see if he feels threatened. And I want feedback from Gaetan. I want him to tell me, did I really feel threatened by this? Was I really trying to hit the head or not? So I know that I'm attacking him properly. Okay, so let's just do this 10 times each. Okay, one thing that you should try when you're defending is to make a trick. And that is when you're defending and you just try to parry. right before he strikes, lean the sword out, like that. Because after 5 or 6 times he will stop trying to hit the head, and he will just try to strike with the sword instead. So I can demonstrate. This is, it happens all the time. When? You know what I'm going to do now. Eventually he attacks the head, you parry, you attack the head. He knows that the parry comes, so he will start going for the sword instead, and now all of a sudden you have all the opportunities you need. And this happens a lot of times in sparring, so you just throw that out there sometimes to make sure that your partner is really trying to hit you properly. Okay? Just 10 times each, and then we'll move on. Thank you. That you're familiar with Zornhau and so. From now on, at least as far as Zornhau goes, I will give you pretty free exercises, and then I will go to each pair and I will work with you individually on small things. Because you're not beginners, I can see, you know these things, and that's very good. I'll just give you a few pointers on how to execute the strike. One, to start, is the guard. You can you can use any guard you want, and I would advise you to try to also strike not just Zornhau from one tag on the shoulder, but also from the high one tag. Try it from the ox or from a low guard, because you will always end up in situations where the Zornhau might be the best way to attack an opening and stay covered, but you're not standing ready like you're used to. So try to vary it a bit. Start from ox and then make the strike. Usually it's just a matter of timing and distance that you need to shift a little bit. So that's one thing. Try to spice up this now that we continue. Start from different guards. Number 2 is, as I said earlier, you want to generate power from all of your body and not just from your arms. So I can just demonstrate how I like to frame my Wong-Tak, either if it's above the head, which I think is the coolest guard, but I don't use it as much as I should, or over the shoulder. I tend to have my wrist straight, so I don't stand with the wrist already bent. And I did it some time because I felt that then I was closer to the opponent, but I also lost all the power that comes from moving the wrist, so I shifted it back. So now my sword is angled behind me. Then I also try to be as tight as possible, so no elbows tucking out like that, and not too far down, because then I almost have to strike from below and up instead of up and down. So tight, and then I try to sink down a little bit, because I want to generate, just like the boxers do when they strike, I want to generate power from the hip. So I try to sink down a little bit, and then sometimes, because I've seen this in the Paulo Sector Mayer and other manuscripts, they're already on the toe with their back foot. So down here, back tight, and the reason why I'm tight is because I want to get the whole body behind the attack. And if I have the sword out to the side, only the arm is moving the sword, and not my entire body. So if I'm getting close, I can get the entire body behind it, and I strike. So don't cheat with the guard, it's very important, because this is where you get all your energy from. So this is how I do it. Okay. Now we will work, because you obviously you know the sword now, and to use it as an initiating cut. But the important thing now is to use the sword now and then use the follow-up strikes, because that's usually what would happen. Your opponent is also a skilled fencer, he can parry, and then you need to be able to make more consecutive strikes. So everybody is familiar with the concept of weak and strong on the blade. Of course, this is the weak part. If I strike a hand there, it's easier for me to get through his guard and then counter. The strong part, down on his blade, if I strike him there, it's much more difficult to get in, he can parry easily. But it's not just weak and strong, it's also hard and soft. And hard and soft means how hard I'm pushing on Gaetan's blade. If I can strike on his strong, but I'm only placing my blade there, so I'm soft. Or I'm trying to be hard by pushing in. And of course, knowing what the opponent does is done through this sentiment du feu. Is that how you say Olympic fencing maybe? The Fühlen in German. So you all know this already, yes? Everybody has trained it? Basically, if you make an attack and your opponent parries, and you want to continue to attack him, because that is what you want to do. You want to keep pressure up. If his point is not aiming towards you, you're usually pretty safe to leave the bind and strike to another opening, like so. Or if you can, also continue to wind in with different attacks. If Ketan parries in such a way that his point is in my face when I attack, first I probably made a bad attack or he made a great parry. But in any case, in this scenario, I can't leave the bind because if I do so, Ketan will just shoot the point straight to my face as soon as I try to move around. So in this situation, I have to do something else. I can either push his blade away and thrust, like in Winden, the Winden techniques, and this is by being strong or pushing hard on the weak part of his blade. So I twist the sword up and I go in. And then if he parries that, try to counter that, then maybe I can go and continue on. But it's constant motion on my part to unlock his different openings. Are you familiar with this, with Winden and the bind? A little bit? Okay. The important thing is that if Ketan is strong and I can't get to him, I will first have to make some sort of motion to get around him. If he's stronger than him, or moving my body, footwork. If I'm stronger than him, I can keep on attacking and either push him from the same bind, or if parries, strike around, like so. So we will try to do that now. So this is more of a free exercise. You will make the initiating cut. And the most important thing is that you make it in such a way that your opponent can just immediately counter-strike, you have to parry. Because that is what gives you the opportunity for the consecutive strikes. As soon as you've done that strike, you try to feel on his blade, am I stronger than him? Is he trying to push my sword away? Because if he is, I can just let go and do another attack. Or is he waiting to see what I do? Is he soft? I'm stronger than him. Then I can try to keep push. And if he parries that, I go on and he moves back. And we continue until I've landed a hit. So now it will look like one major attack, first the Vorschlag, and then immediately feel and try to see what your opponent is doing, and then continue with the strikes and motions as you move forward. Ketan's objective as the defender is just using the parries that we've already done, trying to keep me away from him. If I'm really crap, he can give me the counter attack. I've used it, but mostly he's my coach now. He wants me to perform well, and he just moves back and gives me feedback. So it looks like this. I'm just attacking him and move forward. Like that. The important thing again is that you really try to hit him hard with the first one. But, because the better you do that strike, the more time you have before the next cut. But this is constant motion. This is not striking, stopping, lifting it up, and doing something else. This is just moving fast all the time. Just feeling his pressure and trying to see his openings. You push, okay, the opening is there. You defend, okay, the opening is there. And you keep on attacking like that. You need that drive. So we'll try to use the Zornhau first, shoot the point, and keep on moving, and then hold the follow-up attacks. And I'll walk around and I'll coach you in each pen. Okay? So you just move back and forth. You take a small break, take a small break, and then go back to line. Alright? Listen. Okay, we will continue with these exercises, but I've been walking around and talked to some of you, and I've also observed a few things that I want to bring up so that we can work on them when we continue. One important thing, it doesn't matter if you get hit, it's fine, because we are just training. So make sure that you try new things. This is for training, this is for the time to get better. So you have to step outside of your comfort zone. One thing that a few people have problems with is that once they have initiated the attack, they only maintain the right foot forward at all times because this big motion feels maybe a bit scary to them. It's fine, just you have to try it now. You can't try it when you fight the duel to the death next week, or maybe the French longsword championship or something. It's better that you train now. Training is always to make the failures so that eventually you can bypass them and become better. So, but okay, one thing then, try to change the foot, the leading foot, because if you only stand like this all times, you're not stepping to the side. That's one thing your opponent knows that he doesn't have to care about. You're usually always at the same distance. That's another thing that your opponent knows he doesn't have to care about. But if you add up the passing steps, all of a sudden your opponent has to take into account so many more variables. The angle you strike from, the distance you strike from, and so on. So try to do that a lot of times now. And when you are defending as the coach, communicate with the attacker, because she's your friend and you're trying to help her to become better. So always talk to them, always give them pointers about things. Because you're looking straight at them. You can see if the knee is incorrect, if they are telegraphing before they strike, if they are weak in what they do, or if they're doing something good, you can tell them also. But constant communication, because this is not competing or fighting, this is training. And you are the closest person now to them, so you are their coach. Okay. Changing foot and talking, those are two things. A third thing ties into what the Döbling manuscript calls frequens motus, or constant motion. And you can interpret this in two ways. You know, there's a classic fencing adage that says, he who moves lives, he who stands still, he dies. It is. And you can think about this in two ways. Either it can be that you have to move in Zufechten, the distance before you get in close, the distance where you need a passing step to hit him. That means that you have to keep moving here and change guards. And this is true. You can see this in a lot of, not only in our martial arts, but other martial arts. You want to be able to move. Joachim Meyer and others talk about how you should change guards all times. So it's something that we see a lot in the disciplinary system. But it's also true when we get into Krieg, into the bind. That's also constant motion. Unless you have a specific plan, which is standing still, because you're waiting, or you have a trap set for your opponent, you always want to be moving, even in this distance. So, of course, as I said before, when you attack him and he defends, you will be able to move. So I'm not standing still, I always motion, always motion. With the hands, with the arms, and with the sword, and with the feet. But even if you go into the bind, like with the Speckfester, when you are standing in and you want to see, you want to have the bind like this, and you're waiting to see what he does, still, just a little bit of motion. Changing the angle, see if you get an advantage, or applying a little bit of pressure with the sword, see if he reacts to it. He does not, okay, maybe he does, okay. But still motion. It's not just standing there, making an attack, and standing still again because you don't know what you're doing. If you don't know what to do, at least move a little bit. And do something always to annoy your opponent. Changing levels, changing speeds and how you move, or changing pressure on his blade. Always these things. You want to be the one who dominates the fight. And taking the forward, as the Germans say, taking the initiative, is not only about striking him hard to the head, it's about placing him where you want to be, when you want him to be there, in the position you want him to be in. That's also initiative. That's being assertive in the fight. Always try to dominate in all this. So we go back now, we think about changing foot, we think about communication, and we think about constant motion. Alright? Let's go. It looks really good. I think this is some really impressive fencing. It's good that you have this type of limited sparring exercise, because when you know that the other person will not immediately counterattack you, you feel more comfortable in fencing, with some spirit. So this is I think a good way of learning different ways and techniques. I was told that some of you are going to start to get a little bit bruises and bumps, so we can put on the jackets now and pad up, so we can fight for all of today and tomorrow. Two more things now. One is distance management. Now I see a couple of times where you launch the sword now well, and all of you seem to have the follow-up techniques. You can use strong against weak, and weak against strong, and so on. And you can strike the opening, so we don't have to go through that. But one thing that happens is that when the defender stops, the attacker collides into him. And what this means, of course, is that means that you can go into grappling. But it also means that you, as the attacker, has not decided the distance that you're fighting from. And now all of a sudden you are following the defender. Because he stopped and you just crashed into him. Maybe that was his plan. Maybe he wanted you to do that so he could go for grappling. So we're going to add that now. The defender, from time to time, will just stop and move a little bit forward. And you, as the attacker, has to be aware of this. And instead of just crashing into him, you have to use footwork to get away. So if I'm attacking Gatan and he stops, instead of just crashing into him, which means that I am just giving him the initiative by dictating the distance of the fight, I use footwork to maintain distance and move out to his side. So I attack him, and when he stops, then I have to go to the side to fight instead, using the triangle steps or stepping to the side. So we add a new element of difficulty into it. That's one thing. The second thing is to use the sword now defensively. And now when we have used it as the Vorschlag, we've talked about shooting the point. We try to throw the point inside and then cover behind it so we can make follow-up attacks. But now the defender also, if he feels that he has the opportunity, can use the sword now as a defensive way of retaking initiative. And when you do that, at least how I prefer to do it, is that instead of shooting the point, I strike almost with a slight motion, a little bit tighter to my body, because the objective now is not to hit my opponent, but to get a strong bind so that I can start to counter. So it's not just trying to hit his head up, instead when he attacks, I want to strike almost on the flat of his blade with my sword tight to me, so that I now have domination over the center line. So if Gatan attacks with a couple of strikes, I fire the other, then I make the sword now like a defensive move to counter. It means holding it tight, strike on his flat without the point falling too far away from his head. Because if I do that, he can strike around. So right there, and then see if I can get the counter thrust. So pad up the jackets and so, and then two things then. First, the defender can sometimes stop and see if he can rely distance to grapple, and the attacker, when that happens, has to move around. And I would advise you using triangle steps, like this. Because if you use the triangle steps, it means that you can maintain focus on your opponent. So sometimes you see people just go like this, and run away, which is suicide. Instead, it's better to keep your chest facing the opponent, so when he stops, you step like this, and keep fighting with him. That's the one. And the second one is that the defender now can also try to, when the opportunity arises, make the defensive zone up and counter thrust. Okay? But first, put some more gear on. Talk for a few more minutes, and then we'll do a few quick exercises, and then we'll break early because we have had pretty intense training, so it's better that we get a long break so that we can also fight in the afternoon. Just a couple of things now. When I'm done talking, for a few minutes, we'll go back to the first exercise where you are standing more or less still. We'll have some movement, but just one person makes the sword now and the other person parries, and from time to time that person just does nothing or lets his sword drop and see if the attacker is still hitting the head or if he's missing or following the blade instead. Because I start to see that now. It's a problem that as soon as you start becoming more and more free in defending, you also put less and less emphasis on the first strike, and you start thinking more about the combinations and the follow-up strike and so on. And of course, you should have a plan. You should be able to adapt. But that also means that your first attack is now less and less threatening to the opponent, and that means that you will have less and less of a window for your follow-up attacks. So you are working against yourself in this. What the old German fencing has to solve this problem is indes, to act immediately or at the exact at the right time, without thinking really, just acting on feeling with the proper response. But now you're thinking so much about the next strike that you forget about the initial strike. Instead, it's better to focus on the initial strike, and then while that happens and it's done properly, you see which opening your opponent is leaving. If he goes to parry high, he's leaving his lower openings. If he goes low, he leaves his upper. If he goes left, he leaves right, he leaves his left openings. As you strike, you observe this. And also, when you hit the opponent's defense, then immediately you feel, okay, am I in the best position or is he in the best position? Am I strong or weak? Is he strong or weak? Am I pushing hard or soft? Is he pushing hard or soft? And that feedback then gives you the answer for the next attack. So you should be prepared for the follow-up attacks, but it's better to focus on the first one and then act in this with the next attack. Because the better you, as I said, the better you attack with the first attack, the more space and time you have for the follow-up attacks. The less focus you put on the first attack, the easier it will be for your opponent to just completely disregard that and just wait and counter-strike instead. So that's one thing. Another thing is where we should aim. This is a stupid question for someone who lives in the 14th century. It's just kill him, hit him in the head. But for us, we don't. We train for fun and for self-improvement, and we don't have short weapons. So a lot of times we just want to hit them, and that can mean different things. A lot of times we just aim right at the tip of the fencing mask of the opponent, and that means that if I move, your attack will stop right there, because your body is completely focused on just striking at the very edge of my body. It's better to aim a little bit further inwards, like all to the center of the head, because that means that your body will also follow through. And if I move, it's easier for you to adapt. And if I parry, your body is already positioned or prepared to push through my parry and still hit. But if you're only aiming to hit right at the very tip, you will at the very edge of my body. Your body will usually stop right there. Your attack will stop right there, and I can slip away from it. So that's another thing. Try to cut through, not all the way through, but a decimeter or a couple of centimeters through. It will be easier for you to hit. It will be easier for you to take a better position in the bind. Something else. No, it looks. Otherwise, I think it looks really good. I didn't really know. I've seen Gaetan's club, and I knew they were very good, but I didn't know much about the rest of you. I think it looks fantastic so far. Which means that I have to change a lot of things as we go. But I really like it. So then, we will keep on focusing on concepts after lunch, and then we will talk about Sufekten and how to use Sufekten actively. Again, it's about dominating the opponent and taking the initiative, and that can be done far before you make the initial strike. Because the fight starts, even when you're further out, depending on how you position yourself. So we will do that after lunch to work on Sufekten. But now we go back to just the standard attack. One of you attacks with the sword now, the other one parries, and from time to time he does not parry, or he lets his sword drop, or just shifts his position a little bit, and you'll see if you actually try to hit or not. I usually think of the sword now as a cut and a push, like the sword ort. So when I make the strike, I don't immediately retract again. I'm going in that push a little bit, either to get the point into the face or chest of the opponent, or to push his blade away to create a bigger reaction. So maybe that's something that will help. But let's do that about 10 times each, and then we'll break for lunch. Thank you. Okay, listen up, please. We will continue with some of the other master cuts in a while, and we'll try to use them again, like we did with Sornau, training for Nach, Ficus Motus. We'll try to use some of them to train them, and also some principles in German longsword from the Littonary system. But first, we'll talk and we'll train a little bit with Sufekten, which is the distance before Krieg, before getting into the bind, where we do all the fancy techniques. Sufekten is more or less, I would say, the distance where you can reach the opponent with one passing step and a cut. But a lot of times the fight starts even before that. Because in the German system they talk a lot about, as we said, Vornach, when and for is when you have the initiative, and you are pressing the opponent with your attacks, and you're not just fencing to defend yourself, but you're fencing to offend the opponent. And Nach is when you are in a position where you first have to focus on defense and cannot strike to harm the opponent. It's like chess. When you make a move to take the opponent's king, and when you make moves to defend your own king, when you don't have any opportunity to attack the defensive. Vornach is not something that happens to you organically. It's something that you choose to be in. You choose to be in for, and you choose to be in Nach. And the mistake that a lot of us make is that we always choose to be in the for. So if Gaetan attacks me with an attack, with any sort of strike, you don't need a mask. The proper response would be to try to be in the Nach, which means that I try to defend myself and just accept the fact that he got to me first. But a lot of people, instead, they also want to be in the for, and then we have a double hit.
So learning how to see when it's better to be on the defense and when it's proper to be on the offense is a very important skill. But as far as I'm concerned, at least, having the initiative is not only about attacking with the blade, it is also about dominating the fight in general. And that can be done before we're even starting to fight with each other. If I can get Han to move where I want him to move, in a way that I want him to do it, I already have the fall and he doesn't even know it yet. And that's why it's important to be active in this phase of the fight, where we are already at this distance. This comes down to timing and distance management. And we will work from some of that now, because when we studied the manuscript, they only say they'll keep moving, take the initiative from him, and so on. They don't give us a lot of tactics on how to do this thing. And many of the techniques seem to be from a position where both standing in a guard, in perfect distance, and then something happens. But we all know that's not how a fight is actually done. The fight already starts from out here, where you're moving around, you're shifting guard to provoke him, you're trying to come to you so that you can hit him. That's when the fight really starts. You can win the fight before it's even started. It sounds so philosophical, but it's true. There are a certain number of ways you can do it. One is, as I said, managing distance, and two is managing speed. And what it comes down to is that you want to change both of these two aspects a lot, because otherwise you create a pattern that your opponent can exploit. You might not think about it, but usually you always fight at the same speed, and you always fight from the same distance. It happens a lot of times, because you're just used to it. Your opponent, he does the same. So changing how fast you move, and changing attack from this distance. Next time you start from this distance, and you still throw attack. All these things will upset your opponent's mind, because we're humans, and we always like to think in patterns. And if you do things once and twice, your opponent will think will do the same thing the third time, but then you do something else, and you have the initiative. And it's the same with speed. With speed especially, it's very easy to end up using the same speed all the time. And that is because humans like to, as I said, we like to think in patterns and we like to think in rhythm. And for some strange reason, without talking, usually the two fencers will agree on a certain speed that you're fighting in. So it will always be 1, 2, 3, or something like that. And if you upset that by breaking that rhythm, it becomes difficult for the opponent, because a lot of times the fighting just becomes like a dance. You always move in the same distance, and we always attack in the same speed. It's like you have agreed upon something there. But he's your opponent. You should not agree on anything with him. Instead, you should try to make it as difficult as possible for him. So we will do some of those exercises now. One is very simple. I will, me and Gatan will just move. I will move back, forwards, and he will try to maintain the same distance. And then I will stop, and I will move back, and he will try to maintain the same distance. So he follows me. So if I move forward, Gatan moves backwards. If I move backwards, Gatan moves forwards. I move left, he moves with me, or like a dog, something like that. Just to get the feel of how to work with distance. So let's just do this shortly, okay? In person. Thank you. Okay. I will try to make all the exercises as close to fencing as possible, so we'll not spend much time on things without muscles and so on. I'll show you 3 ways that you can manipulate distance, and then we'll try to work with those, and then where you have, as we did previously, one attacker and one defender, and the attacker tries to initiate with a vorschlag and then drive the opponent. We'll do the same thing now, but focus here is on placing the opponent in a position that is convenient for you, and that's about manipulating them into a distance where they're closer than they think they are, so they're not prepared for the attack that will come. And for this exercise, we'll focus on using the Zwerchhau, this attack, partly because it's the next master cut after the Klumpau, partly because you can strike easily to all 4 openings with it, which we will use in a little bit, but also because for many people the Zwerchhau feels short. They feel that with the Zornhau they can reach far and extend, but with the Zwerchhau it's a little bit more difficult. They feel that they don't have enough reach, and that makes it even more important than if you want to use the Zwerchhau as the initiating cut, you need to be able to manipulate the distance so that you can threaten your opponent enough to give a big response so you can continue to strike. This can be more difficult with this Sfera. Okay, now three-way step. Get that, please. The first one is simple. It's back and forth. What I want to do is to catch Gaetan as he's walking towards me. So this is how I usually do it. I threaten the opponent with a few movements and attacks, and I make him move backwards. And then I act like, okay, this exchange is over. I step back, and he follows in, and then I reach him as he's stepping in. What happens is, if I had just stepped back and then reset it and wait, he will also have realized the distance, and then we would have to start all over again. But if I first drive him or make him move towards me, and then I all of a sudden change, it's not just me stepping towards him, it's me stepping towards him and him stepping towards me. That's two steps. If he steps, it's all of a sudden it's this distance, and not just his one step. So once again, I threaten him, he moves back. If I would have stopped there, he would have moved in, just one step. It's that distance. Okay, step back. But if I move him back and he steps in and me, it's all of a sudden we're this close. So it's a way of getting two steps closer. His step and your step. So one more time. Press him a little bit, make him come back up, and then try to get it right there. Okay? That's number one. We'll start with that one, but I'll show the other two first as well. Second one, I need this circle, please. Can you see the red circle? It looks like this. A lot of times you see two fencers, they circle each other. You see it happens a lot of times. It feels good. That's usually why they do it. I'm not really sure why otherwise. But you want to get some sort of advantage over the opponent. Now, usually they also maintain more or less the same distance between each other. So if I move this way, Gaetan moves that way, you see walking like that. And if I change, Gaetan also changes. There are two things I can do now. The first one is to try to make this circle smaller without him noticing. You see the red circle, this is the distance where we're moving now. And when I change the direction, Gaetan also changes direction because it's not stupid. But every time I do it now, I step closer and I cut the circle a little bit. Then I cut a little bit more, and I have it. It's a way of trying to manipulate distance. And he's thinking about moving around, but I'm always thinking about moving closer and closer and closer towards him. So that's number two. Number three, of course, is to try to catch him when we move from one side to the next. So we move this way, I change, he also changes, I change, and I change quickly again. And now, all of a sudden, we're both stepping in the same direction. So, three things. One, back and forth. The second, moving and trying to cut the circle to come closer. And the third one is when we both step towards the same side. Like that. I'm sure there are many other ways of doing it, but these three I think cover most of it. The most important thing is that I'm trying to make him move in a way that I want him to. I'm not giving it to chance when we're fighting. I'm not letting him dictate when to fight. I'm trying to manipulate him at all times, even before we even, start clashing with the swords. I try to take the initiative. Of course, the fourth thing you can add is changing guards. I show different guards, and he does the same, to try to provoke him to do certain things, to see where I can strike him. And the fifth thing is to change speed. So yeah, that is well. As many things as you can to unsettle him and make him uncomfortable. He should never know when the fight is supposed to start. Because if you always do the same thing, you walk up, you stand, you shake a little bit, and strike, he knows when it's coming. But if it's always something new, then he always has to be on his toes and it's easy for you to catch him. So this is how you want to use Sufen. Taking initiative, using frequency motus to always keep moving. So now the exercise is this. You pick one of these three, so you go through all of them, moving backwards and forwards, cutting closer and closer with the circle, and trying to step in the same direction as he does, and then add a variation of speed. You try to work with the Sverhau, but if you want to do other master cuts, that's fine as well. And when you're comfortable with that, you also start changing guards in, and see if you can make him change into a guard, provoke him, and then strike to the opening that he leaves. But it's always one attacker and one defender. And once you do the initiating cut, it's more of the same exercise as we did before. Once I get the attack to the position I want him to, then we continue on with the strike and we try to move back to the attack, just like we did in the morning. But the focus now is on the active strike. And I'll walk around and help you out. Okay? Very important now that the person who's defending, the coach, always give feedback. Like, no, this doesn't work, you're doing it wrong. Okay, you really caught me this time. No, I was not this is good, this was bad. You should try to do this more and more. So you work as an active coach, an helpful coach at all times. Okay? Any questions, just raise your hand and I'll come running. Okay, so we will do a similar exercise to what we just did, but we'll have a new focus. So we're adding thing on thing on thing here. First we started with the Vorschlag and how to take a powerful strike and then continue on with follow-up strikes until you land the hit or withdraw. And then we added how to move properly to put your opponent in a place where you want him to be, and then you attack and with the Vorschlag and make the follow-up strikes. That's what we just did. Now we'll try to see if we can work with another concept from the Lichtenauer tradition, sorry, and that is Nachreisen, to follow up after. And this is a little bit of an artificial game, but in Nachreisen you attack an opening that the opponent is just creating. So basically, if your opponent is standing in a right vom tag and is leaving right vom tag, you want to strike into that opening. So in the same reason, if he's standing in a guard and is shifting guard, you want to strike into that guard. And the reason for that is that it's difficult for him to immediately move back and parry. That's basically Nachreisen. Also, when if he strikes high, if he goes high and strikes low, you shift the strike above him, which is Nachreisen or Oberlauf. But you want to attack the opening that the opponent is just leaving to go somewhere else. And that is something that sounds pretty passive, which means that maybe there's a way to enforce your opponent instead. And there's a quote that I like. I'm not sure if it's a fencing quote or if it's from somewhere else, but it says that it's good to see an opportunity. It's even better to exploit an opportunity, but the best thing is to create the opportunity. And this is, for me, basically what Lichtenauer tradition is about in a sense. You want always to take the initiative. So what we'll do now is just a simple game. It's a bit free and it's a bit artificial maybe, but we'll see if it works for us. In my club, my student likes it. Again, we'll move around like we just did, but instead of just shifting and then trying to shifting distance and speed and then trying to attack, we'll now shift guards. And both of us are doing it. And my objective as the attacker is to make little threats against the different openings of my opponent. And his objective is to try and cover those openings that he perceives that I'm threatening with one of the hanging guards. So if I'm working with you, if you pick up the sword, the sword. And we are moving around like this, but I make it like I want to attack his upper left side. He goes to cover that upper left side with a hanger. Okay, good. Then I make a feint like I'm trying to attack his lower left. He goes there to cover. And what I want, of course, is for him to leave one opening so that I can strike towards it. So I want him to change guards a lot, and he'll do it himself otherwise. I will also change guards a lot, and not only out of chance, but depending on how he moves. It's a bit difficult to pull off, so you need to help each other a little bit here. But my objective really when I'm stressing him, attacking him, is to make sure that I see if I can dictate which guard he's changing to, and then strike the opening that he leaves. So I look like I'm going forcefully to that side and see if I can get up. Okay. Then I can do the Nachreisen because he's moving guard. And he maybe thinks that he's just planning to be safe, but in reality I'm always looking for the openings already covering. So it is me who decides. You need to work together on this one because, as I said, it's a bit artificial. But the objective is to not just wait for the opportunity to do a Nachreisen, but to create an opportunity to do the Nachreisen. So again, it's a lot of work. You move around, I change guards. Maybe I want to provoke him to attack me, so I change the guard and give him that opening. Let's see if I can strike where he leaves, the opening that he leaves. So two options for you then. Either create an opening for him or see if you can provoke him to change guard and then attack that opening. But once again, it's about applying pressure and manipulation with speed and distance. And now we also have the guard change. You understand what I'm talking about here? If you can't get this to work, talk with each other and see if you can find a level where you're able to work with the Nachreisen. And once you've gotten a few of the Nachreisen hits in, you step up and do it maybe a little bit more intense, so that if I find an opening, he changes guard to something else, and I strike, and he managed to come and parry that again. Then we just work as we did before with the Vorschlag and the follow-up strikes. So this is the Vorschlag that I do now. So we always come back to that. I try to look for the Nachreisen, I make the strike, and if you manage to parry, I continue on with the follow-up attacks that we've been doing the entire day. But we start out a little bit slower, just trying to create opportunities for Nachreisen ourselves. All right? I'll walk around and help you out.
And also the tour through the city was fantastic, absolutely beautiful. I remember that forever. It's very, very nice. Today we'll start with the warm-up, and we'll warm up with weapon in hand. And the reason for that is that we don't have, usually when we train maybe 2 or 3 times a week or 1 time a weekend. There's not a lot of hours every week where we get to hold the sword, so in my club I will try to do everything with the sword. Like you see in football, when they warm up, they run with the ball, and when they do sit-ups, they do sit-ups with the ball around them. Just to always be comfortable with the ball. And we would like to have the same approach in Gothenburg, so that you always have the sword when you run with the sword, you do push-ups with the sword. Always, always, always there. And then we're going to coach sparring. And what that means is that we will be fighting a lot today, but we want to go to 5:30. I think we'll go until around 2 o'clock or about there. And we've been working in groups of 3 or 4, and the important thing is that you team up with people either that you know or that you're comfortable fighting with, or that you have the same level of fencing gear so that you can spar. And we'll work on different ways to use sparring not only as a fun, the actual fighting that we do in HEMA, but also as a proper tool to become better quicker. And to look at different ways how to both take feedback when you're the fighter, and also how to observe and give feedback and help adjust the fight when you are the coach or when you're looking to the side. But we'll start with warm-up, so just get your swords and come back.
Then all 4. Over house. Going down. stop.
You can't get any further with your back, at least with your arms. No way now. Move your arms up. And when you get above your head, also move it back up.
I think everyone does it well offensive because we want to fight with swords. So why we spar is maybe a stupid question. We spar because the sparring is the fighting that we do after all the hours of testing techniques and studying the manuscripts and so on. But I also think that using sparring is a bit more complicated than that, because there are many reasons why we do sparring. Number one, maybe to test the techniques under some sort of pressure. We have found techniques in manuscripts, we have interpreted them in a way, then we also need to test them somehow. And I mean, it's not perfect, of course, but sparring is the closest tool we have at hand, so that's one important thing. Another reason why we spar is to improve ourselves. It's impossible for us to become better fencers if we don't test ourselves in some ways, so sparring is very good. And that's also why it's important to spar with different people, and not just the ones from your own group, because those people you know very well and you're not afraid of them. They know you very well, so eventually you end up like almost like a choreographed dance, because you know their moves and they know they know your moves. This problem can be solved. I'll talk about that later. But improving yourself, of course, is one important thing that gives a reason for sparring. Maybe the most important reason is because it's a lot of fun. We're fencers, we have to fence, so of course we should do it. Everybody loves to spar. And if they don't, I don't know why they do fencing. But there are a lot of problems with sparring too. One is that we take it too seriously, and all of a sudden we want to win every time that we step up on the floor to spar. That is very, very bad, because you will never develop. You will only try to do the things that you already know, and you will maybe get better at those 2 or 3 moves, but if you only want to win, you never expose yourself to new situations, and that means you will never grow as a fighter. If you want to become better, you have to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. You need to fight people you don't know, under maybe rules you're not familiar with different type of equipment, no equipment, full equipment, and you need to do things that you don't think you're able to pull off. That's the only way you can start to become better at them, adding them to your toolbox of techniques. So if you take the fighting too seriously, you just try to go snap your hands, you won't be much fun to fight with, and you won't have much fun yourself. Competing is for the tournaments, sparring is just for learning. Another problem with sparring is that we don't take it seriously enough. Sometimes it just feels like a fun game that we do at the end of class, and that means that we don't care if we get hit. It might mean that we don't put the energy into it. We just stand there and do a little bit of waving the sword around instead of actually trying to fight. And that develops non-martial attitudes and behaviors, where we accept double hits, for example, or don't fight with some intensity. As I said, the one problem with sparring is that if we train with the same sparring partners at all times, we might think that we are very, very good because we managed to pull off techniques against them, then we face some other person and everything collapses. One way of solving that is to use Joachim Meyer's 4 types of fences. Joachim Meyer talks about the 4 different categories of guys he has seen fight. Is the one who is all-out aggressive, the one who usually attacks with a plan, the one person who attacks very rarely and tries to find the best position, and the one who just sits and waits in a guard. So those 4 archetypes can be something that you can use. If I'm very comfortable fighting against my own friend, I can ask him to fight in a specific way, and I'll show you in a little bit. At least all of this means that we have to approach sparring with some sort of structure. We can't just pick up the sword at the end of class and then go. It's not the best way to use sparring. There's so much potential in this tool, this training tool, so we should work with it in different ways. In GHFS in my club, not all the time, but as often as I can. For this reason, we usually spar in groups of 3 or 4. That means that two fencers step up and they spar, and usually they spar for a limited amount of time or a limited amount of exchanges. And that is to keep focus. Otherwise, if you just say we go for 2 minutes and then you start to not care anymore, it just peters out. But if you have a limited set of time or a limited set of exchanges, you can go all out the entire time because you know how long it's going to take. And the 1 or 2 people on the side, they are observing fencing, and when the fencing is done, let's say after 2 minutes or 10 exchanges, the fences come down and the other 2, they give feedback. And it can be anything, and I'll go through it. Or they can say that, I want you to fight again, but now I want you to do this and this and this, because I think you have this and that problem, maybe this can solve it. So it's a constant feedback loop. And that is good, that it's not just me who's the instructor who does it, but that everyone does it. Because the people who are on the side, maybe they feel they have nothing important to say, but they can always see something. They can spot something. And even if they tell me something I already know, that's confirmation that it's something I need to work with. Also, those people on the side, in order to be able to give good feedback, they must start to understand fencing. They have to be able to see what is going on and formulate it into words in their own heads and then say those words in a way that is understandable for fencing. So all of a sudden they will start to learn a lot about fencing themselves. And that means that they will become better fencers, better instructors, better judges if they judge in tournaments and so on. So it's beneficial for everybody. So we will try to do that today. The general structure of the class is so that you divide up in groups of 3, and if there's 1 person left, divide in groups of 4. We spread out in this hall. I will call out 2-minute rounds where 2 of you will fight, and then the 3rd person observes, and he only observes 1 of you. And when those 2 minutes are up, you have about a minute and a half to give feedback, and we'll go through different ways of doing that. So we're just going to do that over and over again, and after each round, when everybody in your group has fought under one circumstance, we'll gather up again, we'll talk about what we did, and then we'll work on a new approach for coaching. And we'll do that until we're done for today. So, the first time we do it now, you as the coach, all you have to do is watch and observe, and then when the bout is over, just give some feedback. So it's nothing special, I'm sure most of you have done it already. So it's a 2-minute round, and you watch one of the fencers, and when it's done, he comes into you and you talk to him and say, I saw this and this, maybe you should work on this and that, or this might be the reason why this is happening and so on. So, of course, then, what should we look for? Well, the most important thing, of course, is when we are coaching and we're observing the fences, who is hitting who? Maybe that's the most basic thing, but then that's a big question. So then the follow-up question becomes, why is this person hitting the other person? And that can break down into several things. Number 1, maybe, who is dominating the fight? We talked about this yesterday. Who do you think is deciding when and where to fight? Is it doesn't have to be the person who is landing the first strike. Maybe the other person is manipulating him to attack because he has the perfect setup already planned. So that's one thing to look for. Who do you think is deciding when and what to do? How are they moving? Are they moving in a linear way? Or are they trying to move around each other? Are they moving at the same speed or the same distance? And so on. This one, when it comes to techniques, is very important. Do you think that your fencer is using a technique to solve a specific problem that is presented to him by the other fencer? For example, is he using the correct attack against the proper guard, or the correct answer with the proper technique? Or is he just using the same technique over and over again because he's comfortable with that particular move? I think everyone has seen the type of fencer who goes left hanger, left overhand, regardless of what you do. That's a typical example of that. They don't use techniques as a key, they just do it spontaneously. So that's another thing to look for. A third thing, I won't overload you with information, but another thing to look for is how do the exchanges unfold? And what I mean by that is, how do they start, how do they develop, and how do they begin and end? Is it always just one attack and then it's over? Is it always 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, and then out again? Are they always collapsing into resting distance, or are they maintaining distance? And how does this affect the fighting? So those are a few things to look for, but you start with who is hitting who, and then ask yourself the question why, and take it from there. Okay? So divide up groups of 3, spread out, and on my mark, we start to fight. Then we'll go through, so in this group of 3, I fight both persons.